And okay, so you guys should be able to see my screen, right? Thumbs up if you got that. Yeah, okay, cool. So today we're gonna talk about diets that work. And let me see if I can get that down there. Apparently not. It's okay. So with that, what is the best diet for me? That's one of the most common asked questions we get is, what is the best diet? How do I get the fastest results? Those are the two top questions. So the answer is, I don't know yet. And the reason is because the challenge is that it's not really a quick fix or a simple solution that most coaches preach. So it's easy for coaches to say, you know, like not even coaches, but just unfortunately, it's that aspect of the industry that's not my favorite, right? It's that aspect of the industry where it is true. In order to really help people, you have to kind of get them their eyeballs, most people think, in order to, by giving them what they think they want, right? So it's the, you know, do this liquid diet for 3 days and you'll lose 10 pounds type thing, right? But as you guys know, we've talked about the fact that, those of you that have been with me a really long time, that true fitness and health and longevity and even getting to our goal and the results that we really want, it is consistency over time and figuring out the right plan as we go. So there is a time for kind of mini quick sprint fixes or sprints in between, like to break a plateau, to refocus, regroup, right? So that's why we'll talk about in our lifestyle program how even when we're on a long-term trajectory, we look at little mini sprints in between, like I said, to refocus, regroup, break plateaus, all the things. And I also know that a lot of coaches do think that there is one diet or one plan that should just work for everybody. And a lot of coaches do focus on one specific type of thing. And so it might be keto, it might be paleo, whatever it could be, right? The 21-day fix. The reality is that I was once like that too, until I discovered the truth. And that is, yes, it is true that there are many different types of plans that will work for a lot of people. But it is also true that not any one of those plans will work for all. And this is why. So even though there's many different methodologies that will work for some, they will not work for all. And I think that's a duplicate slide. I already talked about that. So what I originally thought, though, when I first started out, was that I figured out what worked for me. You guys know that I started out with being uncomfortable in my own skin, struggling with weight after I had my son. I gained over 65 pounds when I was pregnant with him. I'm only 5'1", didn't lose the weight right away because I developed this really poor association with food. So through a lot of trial and error, I figured out what worked for me. Of course, I did a lot of unhealthy things along the way, but I finally found a healthy way that worked for me. So when I first took that leap of faith and went into coaching a good 10 years ago, that naive version of myself, really wanting the best for people, but I just assumed that what worked for me would work for other people. Unfortunately, I've realized that that is not true, that I was wrong. And so now, working with different methodologies and lots of plans over time, there are, and truly getting into the coaching groove, that's when my coaching program, and I was really able to help people completely transform and forever change life. And that's when we looked at the fact that not one plan works for every woman, right? And so it's a matter of trial and error. So some of the things that create distinguishing factors between women is, yes, body type. We talked about that a little bit on the last week's call in terms of how your body type can play a role in, for example, the different types of macronutrient timing or macronutrient patterning. And I won't go through that again because we went through it last time, so you can refer back. I'll send another link to that prior call as well if you missed it. But then also too, likes and dislikes, right? It's really easy to tell somebody well, you've got to eat vegetables, but if you absolutely despise vegetables, that's probably something that's going to be a challenge for you. And even if you do grin and bear it for a week or two, if you don't learn different ways to cook them, different ways to prepare them, those types of things, it's not going to be a sustainable solution because you just innately have spent the last 20 years not liking it, right? In addition, like budgets, some clients and women are, perceive food as part of their budget, and they perceive like, this is what I'm going to invest in for my budget. And, or a lot of women assume that eating healthy is more expensive than what they've been doing, just because they don't yet know any better. But again, to try and convince somebody of that in the very beginning, they have to see some results first, and they have to build a level of trust. So you kind of have to meet people where they're at. The fourth thing is, some people, some women, obviously that's what we focus on, they are really accustomed to doing the packaged meals, quick meals, versus some women come to us or have come to me over the years, they're already like super dialed in, they're doing all organic, they're going to the farmer's market, they're doing all the things. So everybody has a different starting place, right? Nutrition knowledge. Some women come to us and they know a lot. They've been kind of doing their own due diligence. They've worked with other coaches in the past, maybe they've just hit a plateau, or they want to learn something new, something to the effect that has gotten them to the point where they really do have a base understanding of nutrition, and maybe they even understand macros, and they're looking at those things and taking them in consideration. And then of course, women that know absolutely nothing and they're just starting from ground zero. So you can't give the same plan, the same program, and expect the same type of adherence from both individuals. It's very unique and individualized. And then of course, time. Some women love to invest time into food prep and meal prep, and that's their thing and that's their jam. They love cooking, all the things. And then others like done for you options, or something that's very simple, right? That's what I talk about a lot. That's what I'm a huge fan of, is like new healthy ways to create fast food, right? My fast food are like the quick fixes from Trader Joe's or Sprouts or what have you, and doing food prep or meal prep and food prep that way. So how can so many plans be so different, yet also very effective for many people? The first one is the biggest one. It comes down to, what will you stick with? So when you look at not only the factors of what type of personality you are, or where you're coming from, or what background you have in terms of the experience you've had in the past for nutrition, it also comes down to various types of plans, which we'll talk about. But all of these plans are only as good as you will follow them, right? So that is the biggest factor in being successful on a plan, is, will you stick with it? And you aren't good or bad based on your ability to stick with a plan. Some of the things to consider about how to pick a plan that you will have the most, I want to say luck, but it's not luck, that you'll have the most success with, is some of the things that we'll look at and go through too. The other reason why you can have all different, even though we come from knowing that women are coming from all these different perspectives, we talked about, several things, their prior knowledge of nutrition, whether they do fast food or, more in-depth food prep, those types of things. We talked about personality types and where they're coming from in terms of their likes, their dislikes. Sometimes that's actually textural, all kinds of things. So why is it that there are so many different types of plans, which we'll talk about, but yet they all are able to get results for some people, right? Makes sense? So in other words, like whether it's keto or paleo or vegetarianism or the meat eater diet, whatever the case may be, you will find success stories within that group. So why is that? And you could take the same person, follow the same plan, or you could take a different person, follow the exact same plan, and it won't work for them at all. But the reason plans in general work is because, first and foremost, just the fact that you're on a plan and you're trying to adapt, not even a 6-week plan or 8-week plan or a 12-week plan, but maybe you're trying to adapt a new methodology like the keto or whatever the case may be, you're on a plan. So you're more focused, you're a lot more intentional, which then also holds you a lot more accountable to yourself. And then also, all those plans have some things in common, and that is, one, most of them assume or recommend that you're going to start eating as close to the animal or the ground as possible, which is something that we talk about all the time. Most of those plans, regardless of the variation, talk about the fact that you want to stay away from packaged processed food and you want to get closer to the ground or the animal as possible. It's the difference in how that's applied that how that is applied is the difference between the various plants. Does that make sense? But just the fact that you're going from packaged processed food to nutrient dense foods makes a big difference, because by getting better quality food, there's a couple things going on. You're going to feel more satisfied than you do when you're doing packaged and processed food. But then in addition to that, the quality of the food helps bridge the gap of a lot of nutritional deficiencies that you might not have otherwise known you had. And we've, again, talked about that in another call, where nutritional deficits can lead to like poor sleep, grumpiness, moodiness. You could actually be putting on weight if you're, no matter what you're trying to do food-wise, if you're deficient in certain areas. So there's a lot of different factors. And then, so that's 3 and 4, but then also the more movement. Usually when we start eating well, we realize like we're going to move well, right? For some people, it's the movement before the food choices, which is okay. That's the majority of the people. But for some people, it's easier for them to start with eating at least one step better than they were before. And then they start moving more, because they're like, they start to feel good. They start to have more energy. They start to have more momentum to be able to. So how do you discover which plan is best for you? So we talked about this a little bit. I just briefed on it, but here's a list of just some of the top plans. And that is intermittent fasting, carb cycling, if it fits your macros, keto, Whole30, vegan, vegetarian. So I'll go over each of them just kind of with a broad view. So intermittent fasting is the concept of, there's many different ways. Each one of these could be its own little mini segment. So I don't want to keep you for 2 hours tonight. So intermittent fasting is the idea of just eat, stop, eat. That is the simplest way to put it. So you have a very defined window of time in which you eat the calories that you believe that you need to take in for the day. So for example, maybe your eating window is from noon to 8. And I have done complete videos on intermittent fasting. In fact, I'll pull that up and pull a link to it. There is a lot of research that goes behind the intermittent fasting, especially for women, helping to regulate hormones. You tend to not eat as much junk food. It tends to kill cravings because you're in control of your choices for that period of time in which you aren't eating. Make sense? So you are more focused on what you are eating during that stricter window period. And there's different ranges of even applying that. There are 6-hour ranges, there are 8-hour windows, it could be 10 hours. There's some people that say that 12 hours is intermittent fasting. That's pretty much, you wake up and you eat until you're asleep for most people, but, or close to it, right? But any iteration is a step in the right direction, and it's something that you can try. Carb cycling is a concept of, when we were talking last week about our macros, and you have your proteins, your fats, and your healthy carbs. Carb cycling means that throughout the week, you'll have days of lower carbs, moderate carbs, and then really heavy carbs. And a lot of times the heavy carbs are referred to as refeed days. Again, that does work well for a lot of people because you're cycling in and out of the carb cycles. And that tends to be something that is more lifestyle manageable. Actually, the first 2 out of all of these are, I think, the most lifestyle friendly. Going back just for a second on the intermittent fasting, sometimes just even starting with that, if you're used to eating throughout the day and you're used to eating kind of 10 to 12 hours, even if you start with just starting at a disciplined hour, an hour later than when you normally started, and start going in that direction. There are some studies that show there's so many benefits to the intermittent fasting that you don't have to be as clean on the food choices because you're benefiting from the fast. Obviously, if you can put the both together, awesome. But if you have to start with one, even just shortening that window period without changing the foods themselves can be a good first step. And then carb cycling allows you to still have those days, like we talk about treat days. So carb cycling allows you to still enjoy your favorite meals, or your, night out with girlfriends or your husband, whatever the case may be. Maybe that's once a week or twice a week. It really kind of depends on the person and where you're at. There's a lot of different factors to that. If it fits your macros, this is honestly my least favorite, because I think there is a lot of, I just don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because it gave this perception. It has kind of already lost steam, which I'm thankful for. But it gave this perception that you can eat whatever you want as long as it fits into your caloric content for the day, right? or your macronutrient, as long as you hit the right carbs, the right proteins, and the right fats. It took no consideration into account for sugar. Sugar is one of the main causes for disease, whether it be type 2 diabetes, heart conditions, certain types of cancer. Sugar attracts disease. So it is my least favorite, that I put it on there so that I had the opportunity to tell you I think it's bunk. But that's my opinion. So keto is a version of a super low to no carb. I will tell you, a lot of people think that they're doing keto, but they really aren't. It is one of the hardest ones to adhere to. And even the like top guy, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, in the keto kind of realm, he's kind of made his name with his keto plans and all that kind of stuff. He will tell you that keto is not a lifestyle. It, again, is something to cycle and try. So maybe you do keto for a couple of months, maybe you do it for 6 months, and then you relax on that for a couple of months. Because if you're also wanting to consider being healthy, fit, and strong well into your 70s and 80s, anything that is completely restrictive of any one food group, generally speaking, based on the research today, is not going to optimize long-term health. And then there's the Whole30. Many of us are familiar with that. I personally didn't even attempt it because that's a whole lot of cooking. So Whole30 is like you do nothing but cook from your kitchen. It's pretty involved. It is effective though. So for the person that wants to, going back to like our priorities and where we're at life and those types of things, for the person that wants to dedicate that, the benefit is that it does kill the cravings, helps get control of your food, because you're really not taking in any kind of packaged processed foods or sugar, right? Vegan is no dairy, no eggs, meat products, and depending on the level, you know, kind of the extent in which somebody follows it, they also are typically very careful of the products that they take in too. So anything that is even created or sourced by any of those things, they choose not to involve them in their lifestyle at all. A lot of times people are vegan or vegetarian more for the word that came out was like moral reasons, but it, you know, they some of it it's part of a faith process for some. For others, it goes back to treatment of animals and animal cruelty, and they just don't want to think about it, which I can totally understand and relate. And there's ways to make it work. It just makes it harder because, unfortunately, like anything else, like even when you go gluten-free, the food industry has picked up on these titles and these catchwords. And so they've created packaged processed variations that will say that it's vegan. And it, like, for example, maybe it doesn't have any eggs, dairy, meat, or whatever, but it could be very high in additives and other chemicals that don't belong in your body. And so then that creates an adverse effect to our body. Same thing with vegetarian foods and or like, gluten-free breads and that type of thing. When they remove the gluten, they put a lot of other stuff in it to make sure that it's still palatable. So those are things to watch out for. So how do you decide what's best for you is think through what we talked about, like what best aligns with your time, where you're at. For example, carb cycling is super effective. It requires a lot of tracking because you need to be very mindful of what you're doing and very mindful of your proteins, your carbs, and your fats throughout the day, or planning ahead so that you know that you're hitting those target macros every single time. Intermittent fasting allows for, like I said, more flexibility to where you don't need to be that dialed in, but you maybe be restricted in the fact that you like doing dinners with your family and that falls too far outside of your window, or maybe it's breakfast or something along those lines. And so that doesn't fit you for that reason. So that's where you need to really dial, or you have very strong beliefs about whether or not you're going to eat meat products or not. So then you're going to find a way to make the vegan or vegetarian options work. So what best aligns with your lifestyle and preferences? And then you have to commit to 6 to 8 weeks of it and be consistent. Really the only thing, the two on the top, the intermittent fasting and the carb cycling, are the two where you have the most flexibility. Because like I said, in the carb cycling, you can kind of, I guess you could say, if it fits your macros type thing, on the days that you're doing heavier carbs, you have that kind of wiggle room to have your favorite treat meals or family treat or dinners with families that are like a special event or what have you. You can work that into the plan. And you can work it in with more flexibility into the intermittent fasting window, depending on the circumstance. Whereas something like keto, you have to be all in and ready to commit, because keto, and this is where a lot of people fall short on it, the first couple of weeks you feel like really bad. And that the keto flu is true for a lot of people. From what I've heard and what I've experienced, the further you are from a pretty clean diet to begin with, the worse you'll feel the first couple of weeks, because your body is letting go of all the packaged, processed kind of chemicals that have been stuck in your cells. If you get past the first couple of weeks, one of the challenges that most people don't realize is they feel like, oh, they're kind of keto. You can't be kind of keto. You are either all keto, all in, like you don't get the refeed meals until you're well into the process. And that's a whole other conversation, where again, there's some people that do say that, 2 to 3 months into it, it's good to have a refeed day. But again, it depends on the principles. So you've got to decide what's reasonable for you to start with. One of the things that we're going to talk about too is kind of like the carb cycling, but applying just mindful eating. A lot of times these types of programs that we're talking about today are really only needed when you're stuck on a plateau, or you really need to like refocus and regroup. A lot of times you can get very far in your goals and your results just by learning how to be more mindful about your food. And so we'll be talking about that more in the future. So step 3 kind of ties in with becoming more mindful, and that is becoming a student of your own body and your results. So what I mean by becoming a student of your own body and your results is looking at not just the scale, but how your body's responding to things. So how are your clothes fitting? How are you feeling after certain foods? How are you feeling as let's say you pick a diet. Let's say you want to try keto because you've heard that it can be extremely successful. And then you just have to make sure you integrate carbs in correctly. But let's say you want to try that out. How is that impacting your energy, the mood? Do you, knowing going into it that you're going to have that keto flu the first week or 2, when is a good time to start it so that you can stick with it and really see it through that 6 to 8 weeks? But then as you get closer to that 6 to 8 weeks, you have to really think through, am I sleeping better? Are my clothes fitting better? How's my skin look? How does my hair look? Because those are all reflections of how our body's responding to the foods that we're taking in, along with obviously hydration and sleep and those types of things. Does that make sense so far? All right. So most importantly, remember that you are created on purpose with a greater purpose. We give our best when we are at our best, and you are worth investing the time, effort, energy, and resources, those that you love and are counting on you to make this commitment to yourself. So regardless of what it is, when we eat well, that is one of the most critical steps in becoming the next best version of ourselves, because food has such a dramatic role on how we're feeling, our energy, our ability to master emotion. And so then it impacts our decision process. It impacts the way we speak to others. And then it also impacts just how we interact in our relationships, as well as our performance, right? So like we always talk about, discovering our best self and learning that it's discovering the best version of ourselves, and then actually experiencing it, right? Living with a greater sense of joy and well-being. That's what allows us to truly be able to give our best. And then also keeping in mind, like I always say, that it truly is a marathon. We can have many sprints in between, but we always want to have the grace and the kindness with ourselves to understand that it is a marathon, right? And we need to celebrate the wins along the way, right? Celebrate every mile of the accomplishment. Fair enough? All right. Do you guys have any questions? Let me see if I can stop share. All right. Any questions, guys? Making a little sense? I know Patty's been rocking her nutrition.
I don't have any questions, but I know the one about if it fits, I'm guilty of that, because I'm always like, oh, well, it fits within my calories, so I think I can have that. So I've done that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what I was doing, but now I know it has a name, it has a title.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well,
I've done
even
that before.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It was the if it fits your calories, and for a while there was that was a thing, a catchphrase, I guess, and that if it fits your macros. So you'd see people eating donuts and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, "Well, I am still under my 50 carbs for the day." Well, you just ate like 30 grams of sugar, so there's that, right? All right. So, guys, what would you say is your biggest win for last month?
Coach, may I stop and interrupt and ask a question?
Of course.
Two questions. I think you mentioned it that you were going to give us more details on each type of these. Is that correct?
Well, we went through it. They could each be its own call. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And we've talked about some of them before in the past.
Right. I took notes on this, but I would like to know more about intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And then last week's, I got confused and I missed most of it. How do I find the video?
You should have gotten an email. So check because you're the second person that's told me that they didn't get the email, but it looks like it went through on my side. So I think there might be two things going on. One, make sure that you are getting, so not from the trainer eyes, but it would say from client care is what it looks like it's coming from. And that's our other system. And I think the way it's sent, it might look as if it's spam because it's going out to a bunch of people at the same time. And so check your spam folder, but then also if you could follow up and let me know whether you see it there. And I can resend it to you too. I'm just trying to figure out if there's something I need to fix on our end.
It might be a problem on my end. I'm having a hard time with my emails from everyone, not just from you. Okay. Yours are the least amount that I'm getting.
Yeah, we try, like, if I send it, it should be worth opening.
Okay, so thank you. That helps me though. Okay.
Okay, so you are most interested in intermittent fasting?
I think that out of all of these, it just sounds like maybe that might be a good one for me to try.
Okay. I think that's probably a common question, so thank you for asking.
Yeah. And so,
can you guys hear my dog? Sorry.
It's okay. I don't know what you were hearing or seeing on my end, but yes, that one I need the easy also for my current lifestyle. So
yeah. There's also, I mean, we didn't talk, but it works into any of them, but there's also the meal replacement approach, which I've talked about before, that if we're looking, like when we're talking about easy for like on the go, oh, you and I already talked about that specifically, but for everybody to know, if you're looking for easy on the go, then the meal replacement systems are often a good option.
So like the shakes and the snack replacements with the protein bars. Yeah, that does work for me too. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for
Isogenics is the one that I've used for the last several years, but it again, just like everybody else, off and on, depending on the season and what's going on. So I just started, I use their protein all the time, and I love that they have the dairy-free version of the protein now. They've had it for a while. So that's like, I keep it stocked because that is a go-to snack of mine. But then they also have a meal replacement option, which has both carb and protein in it. And that is good if you are at home and you have time to actually like add in some greens or whatever it is you want, maybe some berries. Or even if I'm just on the go, that's something that I can drink with just water.
And can we access the account information or purchase information online? Or do we need to specifically tell you we're interested? In other words, I would like to look into the cost of that.
I'll send you a link.
Current situation. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's on our tribe page too, but I don't mind resending it. Not a problem.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking questions. Anything else? All right.
I'm done.
Huh?
I'm done. I'm sorry I took over.
You're good. I appreciate it. What was your win for last month other than surviving the start of school?
I have started exercising again. I am having a very big problem with my shoulder. I went to the chiropractor, so I have some good things to work on with it. And I started getting my water in better. And I'm not getting the 96 fully, but much improved.
Good.
So I still have a lot of work to do to get back on track.
What's your goal for this month?
So my goal still is to do a minimum of 3 workouts a week, but my shoulder is acting up so much that basics has been hurting. So I still feel like I can get that, even if I'm doing it not the full workout, just
Right.
so that I'm in the process.
Right.
Then I would also like to drinking, not well.
Day drinking? That'd make for an interesting class.
I don't think I have a problem with that. Maybe I do. Anyhow, and I would like to look into the intermittent, look into the meal replacement, the isogenics.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going up my list. Kat, what was a win for you last month?
Starting the program.
Yeah, that's a win.
Yeah.
For sure. What would you like to do this month? Like, what's a
This
goal?
month,
Well, I know you're traveling a lot of it, but.
Right. And so being out of town, I want to make sure I do some kind of exercise every day. Not just, walking through a museum kind of thing, but actually doing exercise every day.
Got it. Maybe even well, I'm sure you'll hit it, but like a step count goal since you're going to be on the road. And then that way, if nothing else, you can at least get steps in.
Well, and with driving, that will be hard.
That's true. You'll be 10 hours in the car. Kat is getting ready to take a 3-week adventure.
Yes.
Last month starting program. Okay, I'm going up my list. My list moved around. Helen, what are you proud of for last month? She said she's cooking dinner. She might not be able to hear me.
I can hear you. Hold on. I think last month I really started with my walking and working on improving with my walking and my running. But for this month of September, I think my goals are just to become more consistent with the various things, be more consistent with my water, my sleep, my food, just consistency, I think.
Yeah. What if we just picked one? Like pick one of those things to really, like if the other things happen, awesome, but pick one thing to like kind of focus on and add on.
I think my water. I've been really trying to increase my water. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. I think out of everything that it's the water. I would say water or sleep, but I think water. Sleep.
All right. Good deal. Patty, what about you? I know what your win is. You shared it today. I love that you shared it on our group. Can you hear me? You might be busy with. Let me see. She might be busy. All right.
Can you hear me?
I can now, yeah.
Oh, okay. My win is that I lost those near 5 pounds, but
Yeah.
I'm just staying more focused on my water, my protein, and my workouts. But I'm just trying to go as lean as possible in my foods.
Trying to go as clean as possible with the foods?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be another goal for one of my goals for September.
Awesome. Good deal. All right. Anything you guys need help with this month that I can help you with? Well, good in the head?
I'm good.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to put your names in a hat and then do a random drawing for a $25 gift card. So I will message you after the call. All right? I should have figured that out and did it on the call. I should have been writing your name down as we go. But I don't have anything in front of me. So
No.
I will do it right after and post in our group. Sound good? All right, guys. Enjoy an amazing night, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.